Please join me in the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, now our main speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Justin.
Thank you. My name is Justin. I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank Keith for having me speak. Keith is a staple in my home group, and he's got some quality sobriety and helps a lot of guys, and appreciate that guy. So, that was a riveting election cycle, I always like seeing how different groups do it, and like it'll devolve into chaos, and people's personalities come out, and it's funny. Thank God for the traditions, you know what I mean? And my sobriety date is February 20th of 2011, and I have a sponsor who's with us tonight, and I sponsor guys, and I've been through the steps, and I have a home group, and I just try to stay in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous as much as I can, and can't go wrong. And welcome to the new people. You're the most important person here tonight. You are. You actually are. You legitimately are the most important person in Alcoholics Anonymous, because without newcomers, without people to give this thing to, we will wither and die and just talk to each other about nonsense until, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict too. I'm also a drug addict, but there's something about alcohol for me that does it spiritually that drugs could never really touch. There's something about alcohol that just on like a spiritual, cellular, deep, primordial level is just it. It's the key to that thing, to whatever that thing is. It's the key to that, it's the key to me feeling okay wherever I am. And alcohol just affects me on such a it's like I feel taller, my gait changes, my voice changes, my eye contact, I start looking people in the eye, I get how, I'm not so full of fear and self-centered. I'm not thinking about myself all the time, right? It's like, that's my problem. I'm my problem. And there's something about alcohol that just, in the beginning, and for a while, it just made everything okay, And then it wasn't, and it was horrible. And I don't know if I was born an alcoholic or if, I crossed that line or whatever, right? I don't, maybe there's a genetic component, right? Like I come from a family of alcoholics, and, on my dad's side, on the Smith family side, it's just, prison sentences and murders and suicides. It's all alcohol-related chaos, right? And, my grandfather, before I was born, he took his own life because, he was an alcoholic. And my dad found him. It was a shotgun, right? Just the most brutal way to go. And classic alcoholic, right? It's like, I want to shut this off. This was his problem, right? And it's like, what is the most efficient way to get rid of this? And, my dad found him and all. It's the alcoholic plague that just touches generations, right? It's just like, as far as the eye can see, alcoholism. And my mom, too. My mom is she's been sober 37 years. I think she just took 37 years. My sister's been sober 21 years. And so there's healing in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? That cycle that's been going on forever doesn't have to continue. The chaos and, I have a son that's going to be born in a month, due date's in a month. And, he's God willing, he's not going to see my beautiful wife up here up in the front. He's not going to see us drunk. He's not going to have to experience the insane shockwave of alcoholism, right? Whether he's alcoholic or not, it just affects the family. It affects everybody, affects your employer. It affects the guy in the corner that you think cut you off. It affects the guy, the cashier at 7-Eleven. It affects everybody. And thank God for sobriety and thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. I started getting loaded super young. I was 9 years old when I started getting loaded, and my sister thought it'd be funny to get her little brother high, and it was funny. It was super funny. But looking back, it's like, and she's since made amends for that. But it's like, looking back, it's I wasn't like smoking weed every day when I was a kid and, 9 years old, but it was like the obsession kicked off. It was like, that was all I could think about. It was all I wanted to do. It was like this cool new thing. And, I'm like, this whole world. And I grew up, from the outside, it was a great experience, right? Like I grew up in Redondo, South Redondo, by the way, let's keep that clear. And I had my parents took care of me, my dad worked and all this stuff. So there was no real outside stuff I could blame my alcoholism, right? Like I never went without, and I never had that experience of being terrified, being around alcoholism and growing up around alcoholism. My mom was already sober. My dad was not an alcoholic, and my poor dad, like having to grow up, like wife is an alcoholic, his 2 children are alcoholics, grandfather, and he's just the most chill, normal dude in the entire world. It feels so bad for him, He's like the type of guy that's like, oh, I had a beer and I have a headache, and it's like, but that's normal people. Like he's a normal drinker. He drinks a beer, gets a headache and stops, and he doesn't think about it, right? He just puts it down, probably on the counter for hours, and doesn't think about it, and goes about his life, goes about his day. He shows up for work on time, and his life is fine, right? Like as soon as alcohol touches before alcohol touches my lips, I'm already obsessed on it. I'm thinking about how it's going to make me feel. I can already taste it. I can feel it in my throat. I can feel it in my stomach. I know how I'm going to feel when it gets in my system. I'm obsessed before it's even entered my body. And then as soon as it enters my body, all bets are off. I cannot stop. I can't stop drinking. I am completely powerless over alcohol as soon as it's in my body. And most of the time when it's not even in my body. The second step is, I love the second step. I've been on it I've been thinking about it recently, right? And it's like, I just went through it with a sponsee, and it talks about in the book, like, the insanity, getting restored to sanity is not like, it's not like, oh, I was so insane and I crashed my car and I was so insane when I drank, I would fight with whatever. Like, that's insane for sure. It's totally insane behavior, but what it's talking about is like the insanity of the first drink. As an alcoholic, why do I drink knowing full well what's going to happen to me? Right? After a period of sobriety. There's no alcohol in my body, right? I'm not being controlled by craving. I have time away from alcohol because that happens, right? We get sober and I get a couple weeks and I'm like, that wasn't that bad, That wasn't that bad. I was fine. I was just kind of having a hard week or whatever, and it's fine. I'll be different this time, And it's the exact same thing every single time. And it will never be different, ever. I will never drink successfully. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. It is spiritually and physically impossible for me to drink and be chill and be okay and be normal. But it's like, why do I return to alcohol knowing full well what happens, right? That's the insanity of alcoholism. Why does that happen? And thank God we have the steps that that get me in contact with a higher power that restores that sanity. So I don't have to return to that drink. You know, it's not that, I'm not sentenced to a life of returning to alcohol. If I get connected with a higher power, he can restore me to sanity. I can't restore myself to sanity, And when I got here, I thought it was the drugs and alcohol were the problem. Disgusting, It's hell on earth, And so normally I would kind of do my thing and I'd, pass out, and it was around the clock, right? It was drinking and getting loaded around the clock, and just strung out enough to like go out and have to get some money, and drinking just enough so I could pass out. So on February 19th, something happened. It was, normally I would pass out, and instead I blacked out. And in my blackout, I called my mom. And, I was like, this is all from her point of view, right? She relayed this story to me afterwards. I had called her, and I'm going, oh, I need some help, like that classic, like total crybaby stuff. I'm a mama's boy, I'm a total mama's boy, I don't care. And, I'm going, oh, I need some help. And then it, slowly turns into like, can you just give me some money? Like the classic manipulation. And luckily my mom did what a good AA does. And she goes, oh yeah, cool. Where are you? I'll come pick you up. So she went and picked me up, and she took me to a meeting at the Hermosa Alano Club. It was a retreads meeting. And I came out of a blackout sitting in the retreads meeting, and whoever the secretary was, some asshole had called on me. So I come out of the blackout right after I shared, and everybody's leaning over going, keep coming back, kid. You're going to be all right. You're fine. And it was like it felt like twice the size of this meeting now, And as soon as I kind of got my bearings and figured out what was going on, it was like, oh, thank God, dude. Like, thank God. Like, it makes me kind of, like, what a relief that was. I was safe. And I was around people that understood what was happening to me. And it was the first time I felt safe in a very long time. And I felt like, hey, maybe I can be okay. It was like the sunlight of the Spirit was shining on me at that brief moment. And, thank God for that. And I remember it, I was talking to my mom, and it was just like, oh, man, I was having a hard time. And I was like, I was in that place where I could not imagine staying loaded and continuing to drink, but I also could not imagine getting sober. And like, what a terrible purgatory to be in. It's a really scary place, where it's like, I know I need to get sober, right? Everything is here. It's so obvious. But I can't. You don't understand. I can't. And that's just not true. It's not true, And she put her hand on me and she said, sinner's prayer, which is, just a brief sinner's prayer, like forgive me and help me. And I've been sober ever since. And regardless of like what I thought about at that time, like spirituality, whatever connection I had to a higher power is completely irrelevant. Because I've had tons of those times before, right? Those moments of clarity, those times where you're like, you like the door is cracked open and all you have to do is step in, and I would never step in, ever. It was, car crashes, whatever it is, and you have that moment where you're like, I should get sober right now. Like, this is that time. This is one of those moments, and then it just disappears. There's thousands of those in the life of an alcoholic. I can't remember all of them, but they're brief and they're powerful and they happen. And the only reason that I stayed sober when that door was open was I immediately got to work in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a sponsor and I worked the steps, because like the frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The big like emotional, I was in a meeting and I have a blackout and then God was so present and only lasts so long. Right? Those explosive experiences that get you in here, that feeling only lasts so long. What kept me in Alcoholics Anonymous was the steps, was a sponsor, was service work, was actual tangible stuff that doesn't change, that doesn't go away, that's actionable, that I can do right now. That's what kept me sober. That's what keeps me sober, Because I didn't know the difference. My emotions ran my life. That's all I knew was emotions and feelings and just primal alcoholic thinking and, like reacting and, that's all I knew. I didn't know about emotional sobriety. I didn't know about how to cultivate relationships with other people. Like I told this story in a meeting the other day. Like one of my first meetings that I was trying to get into, it was this men's meeting and I went for like a few weeks, right? And it was like after 3 or 4 weeks, the guys were still like, hey, what's your name? Welcome, man, newcomer. And I remember I talked to my sponsor and I was like, those fucking assholes, dude, they don't remember my name? And I started going off yapping about him, like, how did they not remember me? I'm there all the time. And he goes, all right, hey, do you remember their names? And I was like, whoa, it was like this totally foreign concept, The idea that I think about somebody else instead of myself. What a foreign concept, It's like, but that's true. I didn't know, right? I'm an alcoholic. Of course I think about myself. That's all I think about. What else is there, It's like nothing else exists except my little world of alcoholism, And I had to learn how to cultivate relationships with other people in Alcoholics Anonymous by being of service to them, by showing up for them, not expecting others to do stuff for me, to show up for me, And the beautiful thing in that is the more you show up for other people, the more they show up for you. Right? It's crazy. And like I had to learn all of that stuff, right? Because I was so selfish and self-centered when I got here. And like my first few years of sobriety was just bumping my head and like having to experience things to learn them, right? Like pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth, right? I think there comes a point in sobriety to where like now I can learn from other people's pain, right? I don't have to go and get hurt in the same way they did to learn that like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that, like it doesn't have to be my experience. But when I was new, I had to have those experiences. I had to get fired from the jobs. I had to get, like my first job, I worked at Fletcher Jones in Newport Beach, right? This ritzy Mercedes. My sister worked there. It was this big deal, and she's kind of higher up, and everybody knew it, right? It was high profile for me. I had like 90 days. And, it was like I was a cashier at a little coffee thing in the center hub of like the dealership, And I was stealing money out of the cash register, of course, They closed it down. They had some extra money in there. I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's Newport Beach. They got a lot of money. And one day the head boss, brings me into the office, and there's a TV, right? And it's like top down. You could see my hand going into the cash register, putting it into my pocket, and he goes, is this you? And completely serious, stone face, I go, no. And he was baffled. He could not believe that I could just lie to him like that. I didn't know any better, right? I did not know any better. I did not know how to tell the truth in sobriety. Because like when we get here, there's no expectation of you to be perfect when you're new. If you're new, I hope that you have all of the embarrassing, painful experiences that you have to have in sobriety to learn a different way. Because that's what happened to me. I didn't know any better. I had to get embarrassed and pummeled and ridiculed, and I had to beat myself up, and I had to do all that stuff to learn that it's not okay to lie. It's not okay to steal money. I have to show up on time, like all this stuff, you know. Now it sounds silly, right? Now it sounds insane. But I didn't know any better at the time, you know. And God will always meet you where you're at. That's been my experience, you know. Always, always, always. Alcoholics Anonymous has completely changed my life. And there came a point in my sobriety where there comes a point in everybody's sobriety, or there should, where you stop taking from Alcoholics Anonymous and you start giving to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? There's a point where, you know, you show up and you're eating the cookies and you're new, and you, like if you're new, take. Right now, take. Please. We need to give to you, right? Like, take all you can. But there's a point where you become healthy enough and you become spiritually fit enough and you become wise enough to, like, transmit something to another person that doesn't have it. That changed my whole sobriety, right? Working with other people, other alcoholics, is the ultimate weapon against alcoholism. It is. It just is, you know, and there's, I love when people are like, there's no such thing as a bad meeting. It's like, there's fucking bad meetings, right? There are bad meetings. Like a few years ago, I was at a meeting, and it was like a pretty significant meeting, right? There was maybe about half the size of this meeting, right? And this guy came in late, and he comes stumbling in, and he's like classic tweaker style, right? He's got the shades on. It's like 9 o'clock at night. You know, he's got a backpack that's half open on one arm, you know, classic. See him from a mile away coming in. Tattered pants, you know, and he's just all hot to trot. He's all, you know. And he comes in, and, you know, somebody was sharing, and after the guy shared, the guy that came in shared, and he goes, my name's Rock and Roll Steve, or I forget what his name was. Had some nickname, right? But he goes, I'm Steve, and if I don't get help tonight, I'm going to die. Just like that, right? The rest of the meeting, nobody shared a message towards him. And after the meeting was up, nobody talked to him. I sat in the corner and I watched it. I was sitting like this far away. Nobody came up to this guy. If anything, they got away from him. They went away from him, right? And if you're pearl clutching in Alcoholics Anonymous, don't do that shit, right? Oh, he's drunk. Oh, did you hear someone say? Yeah, dude, that's what we do. That's why we're here, right? I love sitting next to drunk dudes. It's my favorite thing in the world. Those are the guys that need the help most, right? The weird guys flim-flamming and the smelly guy. I love that stuff because those are the people that need the help. 100%. So this guy, I watch it happen. And nobody, you know, everyone's kind of back, you know. That's a bad meeting. If the newcomer is not helped by the meeting, especially if they say, I'm going to die, that is a bad meeting, straight up by any standard, right? So I go up to the guy, and I'm like, hey, brother, we're going to get you some help tonight, you know? And I remember he was like, I need to get into treatment, whatever, you know? So I had a sponsee that was there, and I go, hey, and he was like, well, my girlfriend, we have dinner tonight. And I'm like, oh, cool, right on, cancel it, because we're taking this guy, you know? He was like, you know, it's like maybe 6 months sober, you know? So we throw this guy in the car, and I go, yeah, we're going to get you to treatment. We took him to the psych ward at Torrance Memorial, you know? But, hey, look, got him into a place that would take him in, right? God has him after that. I did my job, you know? I did my job. I don't know what happened to the guy. I don't know where he's at, whatever. I stayed sober that night, and my sponsee stayed sober that night. And it is my responsibility to extend the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? To the person that's like super quiet in the corner or looks pissed off. Those are my other favorite guys, the like tough guy, like, what's up? You know, like walk in the yard, they come in here and it's like, hey, what's up, brother? How you doing? You doing good? You know, it's like, I love that stuff because those are the people that are hurting the most. There's just like miles of walls up around them. And for me, Alcoholics Anonymous broke those walls down. This was the only place that could do it, you know, and the people of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's one of the things that I deeply adore about my sponsor is he was one of those crusty old assholes, right? And it's like, he's taught me how to love, right? He's taught me how to love another alcoholic, despite all of their prickliness and alcoholismness, you know, it's like, I think that love can cut through that, right? Love and service will cut through that. And that's my job in AA. And it will be until I die. You know, there's nothing fancy about Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no hierarchy. There's no tier list in here. Nobody's jockeying for position. There's no president. There's no CEO. We are all the same. The only difference is the people that have worked the steps and the people that haven't worked the steps. That's it. That's the only difference. And the people that work the steps are helping the people that haven't worked the steps work the steps. You know, it's as simple as that. That's Alcoholics Anonymous in a nutshell. And it's like, it can get so convoluted, right? It can turn into like such a different thing, right? Personalities and whatever, you know, I've just never subscribed to that. I could care less about that shit. I don't care, right? Like, I have such a quality of life that I will lose if I don't give it to other people. It's as simple as that. You know, it talks about it in the 12 and 12. I was reading it the other day. It's like the spiritual paradox, right? It's like, I help other people to stay sober. So it's not a totally it's not a, you know, I get some benefit from helping other people, right? But it is also for the other person. So it's not totally free, but it's the spiritual paradox, right? It's like, I'm doing it to stay sober, but it also helps the other person stay sober. And it makes me, it just clears out the junk from the week, from the day, from the month. It just clears it out. Even temporarily, even if it's temporary, that's fine with me, you know? Yeah, Alcoholics Anonymous has absolutely changed my life. And like, if you're new and a lot of it doesn't make sense, or you don't like it, or you don't like the people here, like, just please try another meeting. Keep trying until you find something you like. I promise you, you will find something, you know. Yeah, it has completely changed my life. And it's such a blessing, right? Like, so this year, it's been a crazy year. We got a house, I got married, we're having a kid, and we bought a dog in a year. Rescued a dog from Tijuana. And what a like fertile playground for alcoholism to run rampant, right? Like, all of that stuff for an alcoholic is insane. How do I handle that? How did everybody else in Alcoholics Anonymous handle it? I'll just do what they did. You know, I don't have to come up with anything new. I'm not making stuff up on the spot. I don't have to figure it out or like whatever. I just ask for help and I take the next indicated step. That's it. You know, and when I was new, it was so hard for me to conceptualize, like, what is that? What does that mean? What is that? Like, it's a safe bet that your higher power, whether you have a relationship with it or not, probably wants you in meetings. That's a safe bet, right? So you start there. Just go to meetings, you know? And in those meetings, your higher power will reveal to you more that you can do, right? At that meeting that I was talking about where all those guys were not remembering my name, you know, it was like around 6 months or so, you start to form opinions, you know, you start to, this coffee sucks, you know, or like, this guy's, Stevie, he's always sharing over the timer. What's up with that guy? You know, it's like, I start to talk shit, I start to form opinions that are based on nothing and, whatever. It's all part of the process. And I remember talking to my sponsor at the time, and I'm going, yeah, blah, 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 blah. The chairs are set up in a different way. And he goes, oh, yeah, cool, right on. Well, why don't you go put the chairs away? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I will, and then I'll come back and talk to you about it. And it's a great conversation. We'll pick it up later, And then I'd come back and he'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, why don't you clean the coffee cups? Right on. Okay, we'll talk later. So like he was tricking me into service work, basically, And the more I would take on about it, I started to feel a part of that meeting, and I started to have less resentments against the people in that meeting because I started to like them, and I started to feel close to them. And I started to feel a part of, and that's what it is, right? Because one of the really terrible functions of alcoholism is the isolation and separation. My alcoholism wants me, first of all, it wants me dead, but it'll do with me being alone, It's okay. It's satisfied with me being alone and not connected to anybody or anything. It's okay with me being in the back of my car, slamming heroin, drinking all day. It's fine, because it knows the outcome. It's patient, it's cunning, it's baffling, it's powerful, And like I have the utmost respect for my alcoholism, because it's not only the drugs and alcohol, it's my thinking. Right? It's my thinking. There's a guy that goes to our home group, Mike, that shared one time, and I thought it was like the perfect description of alcoholism. It's like the kraken. Alcoholism is like a kraken, right? It's just like this giant sea monster that like one tentacle is alcohol, right? But there's 1,000 more that are coming. It's like anger, rage, resentment, lust, whatever, paranoia, there's all these different forms. It's all the same monster, right? But it knows how to strike me in different ways. And the only thing that I've found to combat that kraken is Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I've tried, all the, whatever, you name it, rehab, church, detoxes. Like I've tried all of those things, and they're good, they're helpful in conjunction with Alcoholics Anonymous, right? There has to be, for me, in my experience, Alcoholics Anonymous is the only thing that has worked. It's kept me sober for an extended period of time, because I can get sober, right? Like I can kick the dope, I can stop drinking for like a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. But that it's inevitable. I will always drink again. That thought will always creep in of like, it wasn't that bad. Or it was bad. You should go back to it. Right? You're such a pile. You're so worthless. You should go back to drinking. Nobody cares, It's just a different form of the kraken, right? And this is the only place that I've found that has been able to arrest all of that kraken, right? It's like, it's an amazing program, And like, if you are new, again, and none of this makes sense, what I strongly suggest is that you start off, first step, find a sponsor, somebody that can explain all this stuff to you, right? And explain it in a way and in a language that you can understand, and that you feel safe to ask questions and not look stupid. Because it's weird around Alcoholics Anonymous. It's very weird, right? And if you're just coming in, my favorite is the guys that have never been to treatment, have never been to a meeting before. It's like their first ever experience with AA. It's like, what is that like? Dude, it's like a foreign land. It's like, it's wild to think about, but it's like, in my experience, when those guys that I've sponsored, they've taken to AA just launched into such a beautiful life. There's no like prior resentments, there's no preconceived notions, there's no like, oh, I hate Steve at this, whatever. It's like, it's just so amazing right out of the gate that they've stayed. And like the first guy that I ever sponsored, Robert was his name. I had like less than a year, and I don't even think I'd worked all the steps yet. And my sponsor was like, yeah, sponsor this guy. And I was like, oh my God, it's like, ooh, sponsorship. What am I, I'm going to get this guy sober. And I can't wait, And I was the absolute, by the book, worst sponsor you could possibly be. I didn't pick up the phone all the time. I was like, hey, let's meet for 10 minutes. And then, I'm like, whatever. The guy's still sober today. He's still sober today, which taught me that it has nothing to do with me at all. Nothing at all, right? I don't get him sober, and I can't get him drunk. That's what my sponsor says, right? It's like, because if I start to get into the business of like, I had a part to play in this, then I also have a part to play in the overdoses and the deaths, right? I have a part to play in that. If I start to take credit for God's work, then I have to take credit for everything else. And I can't do that, right? All I do is show up to the best of my ability, try to relay the information, try to meet my sponsee wherever they're at, right? Because it's all different levels. I'm like the de facto young guy sponsee, right? Like it's just how it is. There's an archetype, and you're going to get the people that you're going to get, and that's just how it is, And it's like, I'm the young guy sponsor. Love it, right? It's also heartbreaking. It's also very, very heartbreaking. That's just part of the business here in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just what it is, right? We are as equally beautiful and amazing and full of love and restorative nature of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's an equal and opposite side to that, which is destruction and death and chaos and all of that bad stuff, right? And that's here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And not once have I ever thought about not sponsoring anybody. Not once have I ever said no to anybody. Not once have I ever, because as soon as that happens, that's when the separation happens. That's the first step of the separation, and I don't want that, right? I do not want to have that experience. When I was about 6 years sober, I was living in Orange County, and I had moved back to Redondo, and I was disconnected from my sponsor, and there was about a 6-month period where I was dry, right? I was so on an island, and that separation was in full effect. I was separated. And it was to the point where it was like worse than being new, right? I was sober, but I was so deeply uncomfortable and so like I couldn't look people in the eyes again. I couldn't form sentences and have coherent conversation. And I remember pulling up to meetings and being so full of fear, self-centered fear, that I would back out and drive home. I was so terrified of even walking in the meeting. And I've been sober. I stayed sober through that, right? Why God saw fit for me to stay sober, I don't know. And through like a really funny chain of events, I met the sponsor I have now, and I've been going there for 9 years, and that's where my sobriety really shifted, and became more about service work and more about sponsorship and family than it had ever been, So like, if you're in here and you have some time and you're feeling stagnant or you're uncomfortable or you're like, I totally relate. I have had that experience, and in my experience, all I had to do was just be slightly uncomfortable again, and my life took off. God was like, hey, cool, right on. You showed a little willingness. Here you go. And so, again, if you're new tonight, I hope you heard something that will help you out in your journey. encourage you, if you don't have a sponsor, or if you just need help, ask for it. You know, if you're going through something, would it just talk to somebody? Because that's what changed my life. So anyways, that's all I got. Thank you.